I had to break out the Hurts season cap again. I had that bad boy up in storage. Sorry, LB, but yeah, it feels like it's about time to rally around the quarterback here because I don't know what it is about some of us here in this Philadelphia Eagles community, but you just can't enjoy nice things sometimes, man. It just makes no sense to me for a team to be playing as well as they're playing, a quarterback coming out and showing you that, if need be, he has the ability to do it. And yet there's still people who just cannot rally around this cause, which is insane to me because if this team goes on to have a deep playoff run or to win the Super Bowl, I mean, as a fan, where does that leave you? I don't get it, guys. Personally, I don't get it. But let's get into the conversation. All right. What I think is ironic is great as a season as Josh Allen is having, and I'm super impressed with his ability to take a lackluster cast of players around him and play as good as he's playing. But make no mistake about it, he's dropped some games against some teams that, it leads you to be a little suspicious of them being true Super Bowl contenders. I would love to see that game. I would love to see a Josh Allen, Buffalo Bills, Philadelphia Eagles, and Jalen Hurts game. I would love to see that game. I think that's an exciting Super Bowl. But I don't know how much I trust that Bills team in general, and that's not a knock against Josh Allen. Josh Allen isn't the thing that's hindering their possibilities of doing that. He's not the problem, quite frankly. But it's still, I have no faith in them because they have lost games against teams they should not have lost to be quite honest. All right, let's jump into the conversation. What I think is interesting is everyone forgets the story and the trajectory of Josh Allen to this season, right? To begin with, early on in Josh Allen's career, a lot of similarities to Jalen Hurts, right? Both of these guys had a long way to go in terms of learning how to process NFL defenses and learning how to throw into contested windows, okay? Josh Allen more willing to just let it rip and throw it and hope for the best. Jalen Hurts was a little bit more conservative with his approach there, and sometimes, we would see him bypass some open window throws in the NFL and kind of either scramble out or basically throw the ball away sometimes. So, what I find interesting is both of these players eventually caught traction in the NFL and got their due. Both guys kind of got respected, got accepted for the most part around the NFL because of the way that they changed their trajectory of their careers. There was once upon a time that top 100 list were leaving off Josh Allen. I remember making a video, I think it was the 2019 season, when I've said finally they got it right and they put Josh Allen in the top 100 players because he's clearly a top 100 player. I don't know what they're thinking here. With that said, let's go back to the last two seasons with Josh Allen and talk about some of the similarities we're seeing with Jalen Hurts because I think it's a little comical, to be quite honest, right? To begin with, what happens to that Buffalo Bills team? Eventually, they achieve so much success that their offensive coordinator gets tapped, predictably, for an head coach gig. We wanted him early on. We looked for him in the 2021 cycle, and he was not willing to take certain jobs. I think the holdup with the Eagles is he wanted to pick his guy at GM, to be quite honest. He wanted to come in with his own GM. I think that was the holdup here in Philadelphia with him. However, what happens to the Buffalo Bills? They take Josh Allen's guy, Ken Dorsey, who was the quarterback coach. I believe it was Ken Dorsey, guys. And they promote him to offensive coordinator. So Josh Allen's got his guy as the offensive coordinator, right? There's some suspicion and some suspect that you'll have continuity with the system. Sound familiar, guys? Does it sound like maybe a Brian Johnson, who also was a professional quarterback, who also was a very good collegiate quarterback, by the way, and ran a scheme somewhat similar to the way that you utilize a player like Jalen Hurts? He was Jalen Hurts' guy as the quarterback coach and got thrust into the role of the offensive coordinator. And I will tell you right now, I disagree with a lot of fans who think that Brian Johnson was a terrible coordinator and who think that Ken Dorsey was a terrible coordinator. Sometimes things just don't work out. I don't think that it makes the coaches particularly bad. When you have particularly bad situations at the coaching position, I call it out, guys. You know how I called out Press Taylor. You guys know how I called out Carson Walsh, the wide receiver coach the Eagles had before Aaron Moorhead. I called those dudes out for not knowing what they were doing. And I said, I don't know, when it comes to the Press Taylor thing, I know his brother's an NFL head coach. He might be really good at designing concepts and schemes, and maybe he's got a future there, but he was no quarterback coach. That was very obvious to me. I find it hysterical that people are missing the fact that Josh Allen got his dude fired. Ken Dorsey got fired because of Josh Allen's play. Jalen Hurts, and I don't know if it's fair to say solely that Jalen Hurts or solely that Josh Allen got these guys fired, but they played a part in it. Brian Johnson got fired. Jalen Hurts' guy got fired. All right? We can argue if it was the right choice or the wrong choice. I think ultimately just seeing the way that the offense has kind of come together, and the fact that I think that the main problem is that Brian Johnson's concepts and ideas were a little too similar to what we had here previously underneath Sirianni and underneath Steichen, to be honest. I think that bringing in that fresh face, that fresh idea, those fresh concepts to the offense, even if they are struggling a little bit, I still think it was overall a net positive. And, you could probably make the same argument for Buffalo, right? They detracted players. They brought in, now they got a guy working his second year in Brady in this system. Brady also a guy who got canned once upon a time as an offensive coordinator. All this stuff, right? I mean, there's this weird balancing act you have to do when it comes to these type of things, right? With that said, once upon a time, the truth of the matter is that Josh Allen was playing so bad and was turning the ball over at such a freaking high rate that he got his dude fired.
Zero breathing room. He tries to sneak it. The ball is loose. Impossible.
In 22 and 23, Josh Allen dropped some games because of turnovers. To be straightforward about it, right? In 2023, as good as Jalen Hurts played during stretches of 23, and I do think that gets left out sometimes because Jalen Hurts was willing this team to victories for the first 11 weeks of the season. He had willed them to a lot of victories. And, I believe in accountability. And I think Jalen's an accountable guy. I think he'll tell you straightforward, he was also part of the problem down the stretch with the turnovers. But I do think that everything has a compounding factor, right? It's not a singular thing. I think the defense was the larger component that was causing the team to fall apart, to be quite honest, last year. It shocks me when I watch some of these commentators speak and they talk, and yes, I'm impressed with what Josh Allen is doing on the season. I think he's doing it with a cast that's good. It's better than people want to say. But it's not, it's not the elite skill position players that are out there in San Francisco when they're healthy, right? There's not a McCaffrey. There's not a Debo, right? There's not an Ayuk. There's not, a Kyle Juszczyk even as a kind of like that weird H-back role. They don't have a George Kittle out there. They got good players. Buffalo, you don't win games unless you got good players, guys. I'm sorry. I don't care who your quarterback is. You still have to have good players. But they don't have superstars like that, right? They don't have an A.J. Brown. They don't have a Devontae Smith, right? They don't have a Saquon Barkley. They don't have a Dallas Goedert, although I think their tight ends are a little closer to Dallas Goedert than people want to admit. Kincaid and those dudes are pretty good. But yes, they don't have that top-end talent, and they're winning games. With that said, I'm going to go back to my earlier point. I don't trust them in the playoffs, though. I would love to see that Super Bowl, but they've lost to teams like the Rams who can actually throw out some talent on you. They have a core nucleus of players, right? A Kyron Williams. They got a Cooper Kupp, a Puka Nacua. They've got this core group of players that are pretty dang good, right? They know how to play offensively, and they got dudes that can execute and beat you. They took them to task, to be quite honest, just a couple of weeks ago. So, to me, it's weird, right? Even when you go to Detroit does have a core nucleus of players. I don't think they're the superstar level, right? I like Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I don't think he's a complete receiver. I think he's a really good slot guy. I would not trade A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith for an Amon-Ra St. Brown, even though he's very productive. I just think his game's a little limited, to be quite honest. With that said, he's very good in the role that he plays. They have good guys out there. Jameson Williams is still an explosive player, right? They got a really good 1-2 combination at running back. They got a great offensive line there. When they're healthy, they have a great defensive line, but that defensive line is just injury-riddled right now. It can't be trusted at this point. With that said, I get it. Josh Allen he's elevating the play of guys around him. He doesn't have an all-star cast. That cast is better than people want to admit, though. But that's also the concern with them, is that they're beatable. They're beatable in the postseason when you got to play better teams, right? We saw what Baltimore did to them. Baltimore derailed them, right? You watch the Rams who don't have a home environment, the Rams absolutely eventually outscored them. They just put up more points than they could continue to put up. Because that defense is it's a problem in Buffalo, to be quite honest. It's not very good against better teams. So, to me, it's weird to watch this dichotomy play out with people. Is Jalen Hurts having a little bit of a rough go with this system? Yes, but it's multifactorial. That's the problem, guys, is that we're acting like the detraction of the skill players, right? We want to say, Josh Allen is doing this about these players. Well, Jalen Hurts earlier on in the year was struggling, right? Week one, he had the full cast of compliments, and we saw a pretty balanced attack. He had to turn over, he had some turnovers, and we had to get that under control. There's no doubt about it. But, we saw what the offense could be when it was fully healthy. We saw how dynamic this team could be offensively. And the defense had to play a little catch-up, and it did, right? You go into Tampa Bay and people are freaking out, but everyone's forgetting the circumstances of that game. How many players do you need to be down for the Philadelphia Eagles to beat them? Lane Johnson, Mekhi Becton, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith? Like, come on, man. Like, of course that Tampa Bay, in Tampa, in inclement, I won't call it inclement weather, but in, like, really miserable weather conditions, won that football game because we were missing a pretty good, important part of the nucleus of our offense. The entire right side of the offense was down. Both outside threats were down. There's a reason why in a 2-week span between weeks 3 and 4, Dallas Goedert had 19 freaking targets, guys. He's only had I think 22 or something like that past the bye week. But in 2 weeks, he had 19 targets. It's because we had to keep changing in and out. Everyone forgets in week 3 against New Orleans. Eventually, we ended up having Lane Johnson out in that game. Mekhi Becton went down in that game as well to close out that game, I believe. Devontae Smith went down in that game. A.J. Brown was already out for that game. And we had to close that game out like that and play the following game the next week on the road in miserable weather conditions. And we got our tails kicked. I mean, yeah, if we have to go into the playoffs and play Tampa Bay with the same set of circumstances, I'd be concerned. Well, what's the likelihood of that? I'm going to go off the probability that's probably not going to happen. And both of the times that Tampa Bay has beat the Eagles recently, I know they beat them 3 times if you go back to 2021, but since the core of the Eagles was put together, both times it was without A.J. Brown. When A.J. Brown was in there and they had a run game, things went differently early on in the 23 season, didn't they? Tampa Bay got its butt kicked. Tampa Bay got stranglehold the way that Pittsburgh got stranglehold. You guys remember that game? Yeah, the Eagles ran 9 minutes of clock to close that game out. Absolutely snatched the soul of Tampa Bay in that game. So, I'm sorry. Tampa Bay's a good team. I really respect the crap out of Todd Bowles and what he can do defensively. But truth be told, when this team had a somewhat full cast of complements around them, Tampa Bay was no match for this Eagles team. It got their tails whooped in that game. To me, a lot of people are missing the forest for the trees. There was some inconsistency in what was out there for Jalen to work with, and I think that led the offense, especially the offensive line, to go to the coaching team and say, hey, guys, what are we doing here? Put the ball. Let's run the ball. We're missing our compliments on the outside. Put the ball in our hands. Let us win the game. Saquon becomes a superstar. This offensive line starts to pummel teams. Why change the formula when it's working? They were still mixing in the pass for quite a few weeks. It wasn't really until the last little stretch of games, that it was like a 3-game span before you got to Pittsburgh, to where the passing game really got pulled back from. To where it got really, really pulled back from. But then, we got Devontae Smith back finally for the Carolina game. Still don't know if he was 100%. You're dealing with a hammy. Things get a little tricky with a hammy. And then, you 1 week past that, now they're out there again for the same amount of time, right? You got guys that are returning into the lineup. You got guys healthy. They take Saquon Barkley in the run game away, and Jalen Hurts absolutely schools them. A.J. Brown schools them. Devontae Smith schools them. The passing game comes to life. I don't know, guys. I think people don't understand the position that well, but they have a lot of takes on the position. And it's a little frustrating to watch these people talk about things that they don't quite understand. It's nonsense with a lot of these people. What they don't get is that, to some degree, I think the struggle is that you have this internal battle to where they want to devolve power to Jalen Hurts, right? That is the concept, kind of one of the leading factors of playing in an Earhart-Perkins system, is that it is very much a quarterback-driven system. All right? Quarterbacks have a ton of autonomy. I love Pat Mahomes. I love Joe Burrow. I love those guys. They're very dynamic players. They also play in a system to where it is coordinator-controlled, not quarterback-controlled. It is a West Coast system primarily, and the coordinators are the stars there. Now, what these dudes can do within the system, and when you get a guy like Mahomes, what he can do off-platform and out of the structure of the system is special. But that doesn't take away from the way that it's conceived. It's conceived different in Philly, right? You heard Tom Brady speak about this, where he said, really the way you should be judging quarterbacks is, are they getting you into the right play call? I think that's the part where the offense is, we are devolving power to Jalen. It's a lot to take on initially. And I do think that they, part of it was the fact that we just didn't have enough skill position guys out there on a consistent basis to lean on the passing game. But I also think part of it is that there is that expansion. And some of the things that we saw happen is that they were trying to work within the huddled system to give Jalen a chance. And then you started seeing that, Okay, maybe we need to draw up some stuff, right? Some play action passes to where this is more of a Kellen Moore coordinated thing. Kellen Moore's designing and scheming it up across the middle of the field. You had that deep in route to A.J. Brown in the one game was a really pretty throw from Hurts. It's 100% coordinator driven there, guys. When they go hurry up, though, that's quarterback driven. When you're in the 2-minute offense, that's quarterback driven. When you go no huddle, that's quarterback driven. He's got control of things at the line. Now there's a pre-list of things that are set up there. You got a play sheet that's defined there. But Jalen getting guys into the right position, audibling things in there, switching sides, things like that, calling the protection. That's what they're talking about, guys. I think that's where they detract it more so. It's not a skill set thing, guys. It was a knowledge-based thing because we're asking more of Jalen Hurts than we've ever asked of him before. My theory is in the Steichen years, they did very little in terms of the autonomy part with Jalen Hurts, right? Kelsey was calling the line slides. He was doing all those things. Did Jalen have the right to maybe audible some things here and there? Probably so. But we know that last year, it was made a big deal that was part of the Brian Johnson calling card of being a former quarterback. They were going to work that stuff in, and now we got another former quarterback, right? We're trying to refresh and regroup the offense a little bit, and I think that's what people are misjudging, right? That's where I think the real struggle is coming in, is that you got a little bit of a back and forth between coordinator and quarterback in terms of where the autonomy is going to be split here, and a new offense to an extent, right? We're still running some of the same concepts. Like, you're not going to 100% change your offense out, guys. And no matter what the concept is, your landmarks might be different in terms of the route tree where you stem it at the top of the route tree. It could be different by the landmarks, by the system. How far you're split off, like if you go tight to formations, that means 2 yards, 3 yards. Those things can be different, right? Are you running it from a 2x2 set versus a 3x1 set? Are you going to stack that 3x1 set? Like, those things can be fundamentally different by the system and the scheme. But the route tree is a freaking route tree, guys. Like, the route tree's a route tree, man. These are been done for so many years. Nothing is that new in the NFL. Every now and then someone brings in a little wrinkle that's a little different. But we're talking about minute differences that make things seem really different. It's an interesting dichotomy going on, guys. I'm curious to see if the passing attempts don't uptick a little bit. I think we've all kind of suspected that, no, like, we shouldn't get too cute. I even said it. Don't get too cute. I still think, and I still maintain, that between 26 attempts and 32 attempts is a sweet spot for quarterbacks. That's where you've got a strong run game that can support you, but yet you're not completely detracting from the play of your quarterback, right? If this offense can get between 24 to 26 attempts a game with Jalen Hurts, I think that Jalen is going to be perfectly fine coordinating this offense. I think that gives you enough attempts for your wide receivers, right? I think that you will be balanced to an extent. And by the way, games are going to dictate things, right? Where we want 24 to 26, there might be games like last week where it's 32, just depending upon the way defenses are playing you. There could be some games where it's 24. It's on the extreme low end of things, right? Because of the way defenses are playing you. It just depends. It depends on what the teams want to take away. I mean, to me, if you're the Eagles, the thing you have to factor in on is, okay, are you going to stop Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley in the run game with this offensive line? Or are you going to try to bracket your coverages and take away Jalen Hurts' reads to essentially A.J. Brown? That's the thing. And how teams do it is going to define it. Because it's really difficult for them to bring, when you go single high, guys, and you close the middle of the field off, and you go single high, and you bring that guy in the box to try to get 7 or 8 in the run game, the problem is that if you're going 8 in the run game, you cannot blanket anybody. You don't have enough players to blanket anything. However, if you go 7 in the run game, you can still blanket the weak side of the offense, right, where A.J. Brown normally plays to, okay? You can blanket that side, but now you still have to figure out what you're going to do about Devontae Smith. That's what makes the Eagles' offense really difficult to defend. And you also have to figure out that even if you bring 7 down in the box, man, this Philadelphia Eagles team is really good at getting angles on you. They will run gap and power on you, and they will find the angle, and they will find a way of getting an advantage where you thought you had 7 in the box, so you have the +1, but all it takes is for them to run a little power, to run a little gap on you, and now you got a 4-on-3 on a side, or you got a 5-on-4 on a side. It can completely change you real quickly like that. That's going to be the magic of everything, guys, is how Kellen Moore and Jalen Hurts figure this autonomy piece out, okay? There has been a little bit of a detraction to an extent here in terms of how much power was being given here. But I can tell you, Jalen still has some autonomy at the line of scrimmage. You know how I know he has autonomy? Rita. Look up what that means, guys. Look up what famous quarterback used to use the read a call. Hint, hint, Tom Brady. That tells me that Jalen still does have some control of the line of scrimmage here. Now, are they building in more coordinator-led stuff at times? Sure. But last week, it was more of the hurry-up, 2-minute stuff, which is very much the quarterback-dominated system. So clearly, Kellen gave a little bit of, autonomy to his quarterback to operate that game and said, all right, let's do what we do really well. We're going to design a short, and I told you guys the passing game was changing. We're going to design some shorter passes. Told you the passing game had been changed, guys. It's not as vertical as it once was. Now, are they going to come back to the vertical game? I think so. I think they're trying to bring people down into the box to play. I think you're going to see that vertical game get unleashed eventually. But right now, you're seeing a lot of the Kellen Moore stuff, a lot of the hash throws. You're seeing a lot of the in-break and route throw stuff. There's a lot of passes in that 10-yard radius. Get guys in space and get yak. That's been the offense, guys. I have a video that I made earlier in the week. If you want to watch it, I'll link it here, okay? If you want to join the Cerebral Football community and get more breakdowns like this, I'd love to add you guys. You just need to click over here to do that. And with that said, guys, I'm going to jump off of here. We're going to see. We're going to reevaluate, guys. After this game, we will reevaluate what the offense is. I will go through the last 2 weeks, and I will see if there's anything that's popping out to me in terms of the tape that I can show you schematically that has changed. All right, y'all. Peace. I'm out of here.